Sometimes it only takes a single moment, a careless word, a missed opportunity, a small disappointment, to throw your whole day off balance. 1 minute you're calm and the next, you're caught in a whirlwind of frustration or sadness, wondering why it feels so hard to hold on to your peace. The truth is, even the calmest people can find themselves shaken by life's unpredictable storms. But what if you could meet those storms without losing yourself? What if, no matter what others say or what happens around you, your inner world could stay steady and clear? That's the real power of not reacting, a strength taught by the Buddha for thousands of years. He showed us that our minds can be either our greatest source of suffering or our greatest tool for freedom, and that by mastering our reactions, we open the door to genuine happiness and resilience. This isn't just about controlling anger or hiding your emotions. It's about discovering a way of living where you choose how to respond, rather than being pulled by every little wave. In today's video, we're going to uncover simple, practical Buddhist teachings that can transform how you handle stress, negativity, and emotional ups and downs. You'll learn how to keep your mind calm, how to stop letting outside events control your feelings, and how to respond with wisdom instead of impulse. These aren't just ancient ideas, they're life-changing skills you can use every single day. So if you've ever wished you could stop overthinking, or if you're tired of letting small things ruin your mood, stay with me until the very end. Every insight in this video builds on the last, and I promise you'll come away with a new sense of peace and control over your own life. And if you appreciate what we're doing here, bringing Buddhist wisdom to help you grow and find real happiness, I'd love it if you'd hit the subscribe button. It's free, it helps our mindful community grow, and it means so much to me personally. Don't skip any part of this journey. Your calm, unshakable mind is waiting for you, and we're starting right now. There's something quietly beautiful and surprisingly rare about truly showing up for your own life, right here and right now. Most of us are experts at living everywhere except the present moment. Our minds drift backward, replaying old regrets, replaying conversations we wish had gone differently, or reliving mistakes that left a mark on our hearts. Or we shoot forward into the future, worrying about what might go wrong, planning our next move or waiting for happiness that always seems just out of reach. But while we're busy traveling in time, real life quietly unfolds in the background, waiting for us to notice. The Buddha understood this deeply. He taught that the only place we can ever experience true peace, true clarity, or true happiness is this very moment, because the present is all that actually exists. When you think about it, the present moment is where your power lives. You can't change what happened yesterday, and you can't control what will happen tomorrow. But right now, you get to choose how you respond, what thoughts you follow, and whether you allow yourself to feel joy, gratitude, or peace. In Buddhism, mindfulness is the art of coming home to this moment with gentle awareness, breathing in, feeling the air move through your body, noticing the sensations, the sounds, and the feelings that are alive right now. This isn't just some poetic idea, it's a practical tool. Every time you bring your attention back to the present, even for a few seconds, you break the cycle of anxiety and regret. You give your mind space to breathe, and you make wiser, kinder choices. The Buddha compared the mind to a restless monkey, always jumping from branch to branch, never content to just sit and be. But with practice, we can teach that monkey mind to pause, to settle, and to see things clearly. Even small acts of mindfulness, a sip of tea, the warmth of sunlight on your skin, the sound of your own breath, can ground you in the present, offering an anchor when your emotions threaten to sweep you away. And as you become more present, you start to realize how much beauty and peace have always been available, hidden beneath the noise of thinking. This is why all transformation, all real change, begins in the present. By honoring this moment as sacred and enough, you step into your true life, the only one you ever really have. There's a strange little reflex living inside all of us, a part of our minds that leaps into action before we've had a chance to pause or breathe. You might notice it when someone cuts you off in traffic and your heart pounds with instant anger, or when a sharp comment from a friend stings more than it should, leaving you replaying it for hours. We don't always want to react this way, but it feels automatic, almost like our minds are wired to defend, attack, or retreat before we even know what's happening. The Buddha understood this tendency deeply. He taught that our reactions aren't random. They're habits shaped by years of conditioning, stories we've told ourselves, and unconscious fears that linger beneath the surface. Think about it. So much of our day is spent on autopilot, responding to familiar triggers in the same old ways. It's not just about anger either. Sometimes we react with worry, jumping to the worst possible outcome before we have any real information. Or we react with guilt, replaying small mistakes over and over as if punishing ourselves will somehow change the past. The Buddha described this as the monkey mind, restless, easily startled and quick to jump from one branch to another. He taught that these reactions are natural, but they're not inevitable. They arise from our attachments, our need to feel safe, respected, or in control, and from our aversion to discomfort or pain. What's even more interesting is that our brains have actually been shaped by evolution to react quickly. In the earliest days of humanity, this kept us alive. A rustle in the bushes might have meant danger, so our minds learned to respond fast. But in modern life, where most threats aren't lions but deadlines, disagreements, or disappointments, this ancient wiring can actually steal our peace. Buddhism encourages us to see these reactions clearly, not as personal failings, but as learned responses. The first step is simply to notice, my mind wants to jump in here, my heart is racing, my thoughts are spinning. With awareness, a small space opens up between the trigger and our response, a space where freedom lives. There's something quietly revolutionary about stopping in the middle of a busy day and really noticing where you are, what you're feeling, and what's actually happening in your mind. Most people move through their days on autopilot, caught in loops of worry, regret, planning, and distraction, rarely present for the only moment that truly belongs to them, this one. The Buddha saw this tendency in people thousands of years ago, and he made mindfulness, the gentle art of paying attention, one of the cornerstones of his teachings. He knew that without awareness, we're constantly swept away by our thoughts and emotions, endlessly reacting instead of choosing how to respond. What makes mindfulness so powerful isn't just that it helps us relax or calm down, though those are wonderful benefits. It's that mindfulness gives us back our power to choose. When you're truly present, you start to notice the first flickers of irritation before they burst into anger, or the subtle ache of sadness before it turns into despair. You can pause, take a breath, and see what's really going on inside, rather than getting lost in the storm. It's a kind of superpower, not because you don't feel things, but because you're no longer at their mercy. The Buddha compared our minds to a wild elephant, charging wherever it wants, creating chaos and confusion. Mindfulness, he said, is like training that elephant so it becomes steady, calm, and truly helpful. A lot of people hear the word mindfulness and think it has to be complicated or mystical, but it's actually very simple. It starts with noticing your breath, the feeling of your feet on the ground, or the taste of your tea. It's about coming back over and over to this moment without judgment. When your mind wanders, and it will, you just gently guide it back, like a friend taking your hand and leading you home. Over time, this practice changes your relationship with your thoughts. You stop believing every story your mind tells you. You realize you are not your worries, your stress, or your fleeting emotions. You are the awareness that notices them, the calm in the center of the storm. There's something deeply comforting about the simple act of sitting quietly with yourself, especially when life feels overwhelming. For many of us, the mind can seem like a restless monkey, leaping from worry to worry, from old memories to future fears, barely pausing to breathe. When your emotions are strong, it's so easy to feel swept away by them, as if you're at the mercy of every thought and feeling that passes through. But here's where Buddhist wisdom offers us a gentle, powerful alternative: meditation. It's not just a practice for monks or people living in silence. It's a lifeline for anyone who wants to find calm in the middle of life's noise. The Buddha himself taught that our minds could be trained, shaped and soothed, just like we train the body with gentle exercise or nurture a plant with daily care. Meditation at its core is about coming home to yourself. Instead of trying to control or suppress your feelings, you start to notice them as they are. You learn to watch your anger, sadness, excitement, or even anxiety with a kind curiosity rather than judgment or fear. Imagine your thoughts and emotions as leaves floating down a river. With meditation, you become the calm observer on the bank, simply watching them drift by, no longer needing to chase after each one or push any away. The magic of this practice is that over time your emotions lose their power to control you. You gain a bit of space between what happens and how you respond, and that space is where peace is born. In Buddhist tradition, this is sometimes called taming the mind. It doesn't mean shutting down your feelings or aiming for a blank, empty mind. Instead, it's about developing awareness, seeing what's happening inside you moment by moment, and meeting it all with acceptance. The Buddha often described meditation as the way to see things as they really are. When you sit quietly, focusing on your breath or a simple phrase, your mind gradually becomes less stormy. You start to realize that even your strongest emotions are temporary. They rise, they fall, and then they fade, just like clouds moving through the sky. Meditation teaches you that you are not your thoughts or your feelings. You are the peaceful sky beneath it all. One of the hardest truths to accept in life is that nothing stays the same. Not the people we love, not the feelings we cherish, not even the problems we desperately want to solve. It's a reality that can bring up fear, sadness, or even resistance. Yet, if you look closely, you'll see that everything in the world is in a constant state of change. Seasons shift, friendships evolve, circumstances rise and fall like the tide. The Buddha taught this lesson over 2,500 years ago, encouraging us to look deeply into the nature of impermanence, or anicca. He didn't do this to make us anxious, but to free us from the suffering that comes from holding on too tightly. Think about a moment of pure happiness, a celebration, a beautiful day, or even the comfort of your morning tea. How often do we wish those moments could last forever? But just as joy arrives, it also gently fades, making room for new experiences. The same is true for pain or discomfort. Even the heaviest sadness, when you really pay attention, eventually lightens and transforms. This is one of the great gifts of Buddhist wisdom, to understand that all things, both good and bad, are temporary. When we recognize this, we stop clinging so tightly, and our hearts become a little lighter. The trouble starts when we try to freeze time, when we grip people, outcomes, or even our sense of self, hoping to keep things exactly as they are. This clinging is where suffering is born. Buddha explained that attachment to what is pleasant and aversion to what is unpleasant are two sides of the same coin. The more we resist change, the more pain we create for ourselves. But when we open our hands and our hearts, we make space for life's natural flow. Instead of fearing what will leave, we start appreciating what we have while it's here. There's something quietly life-changing about realizing you don't have to be at war with yourself or the world around you. So many of us grow up believing that strength means pushing through, toughening up, or never letting our guard down. But if you look closely at the wisdom of the Buddha, you'll notice he taught a different kind of strength, the strength of a gentle heart. He reminded his followers that compassion isn't just about being nice to others. It starts with learning how to soften the harshness we often direct toward ourselves. Think about how quick we can be to judge our own mistakes, to replay embarrassing moments, or to criticize ourselves for not handling something perfectly. The Buddha called this self-inflicted suffering, and he taught that real peace begins when we meet ourselves with the same kindness we'd offer a dear friend. The beauty of compassion is that it's a skill, not a trait you're born with or without. In Buddhism, practices like metta, also known as loving kindness meditation, were created for this very reason. You sit quietly and send gentle wishes of well-being, first to yourself, then to others, even those you find difficult. May I be happy. May I be peaceful. May I be free from suffering. At first it might feel awkward, especially if you're used to being your own worst critic, but the more you practice, the more you notice a shift inside. Suddenly, when you make a mistake, your first reaction isn't anger, it's understanding. When you feel overwhelmed, instead of shaming yourself, you offer yourself patience and space to breathe. This simple inner change softens everything. It doesn't make life's challenges disappear, but it makes you less brittle, less reactive, and more capable of facing what comes. This inner softness then radiates outward. When you can forgive yourself, it becomes much easier to forgive others. When you can see your own suffering with kindness, you recognize it in others too, even those who might not treat you kindly. The Buddha taught that compassion dissolves the boundaries between self and other, creating a sense of connectedness that's far deeper than fleeting agreements or differences. It doesn't mean you accept harmful behavior or forget your own needs. Instead, it means you relate to the world from a place of understanding, not fear. It's amazing how quickly life can test your patience. You might be in the middle of a conversation and suddenly someone says something that strikes a nerve. Or maybe you're sitting in traffic and someone cuts you off, making your heart race and your temper flare. In those first few seconds, it can feel almost impossible not to react. Our minds are wired to protect us, to jump into action or defense before we even realize what's happening. But what the Buddha taught, what so much of Buddhist practice comes down to, is the art of slowing down just enough to see clearly before we act. That tiny space, the moment between stimulus and response, is where our freedom lives. In Buddhist teachings, there's a beautiful reminder: with our thoughts, we make the world. Every reaction, every word, every choice flows from the state of our minds. If we can just pause, even for a single breath, we give ourselves the gift of clarity. The pause isn't about suppressing your feelings or pretending you don't care. It's about noticing what's rising up inside you: anger, fear, hurt, confusion, and giving it a moment to breathe. When you do this, you shift from being a passenger on the runaway train of your emotions to becoming the conductor, calmly steering your response with intention and awareness. The Buddha often compared the mind to a wild elephant. Left untamed, it runs in every direction, causing chaos and suffering. But with gentle, consistent training, by learning to pause and observe, we can bring the mind back to stillness. This pause doesn't have to be long or dramatic. Sometimes it's as simple as taking a single conscious breath or silently repeating a calming phrase. You might feel a rush of heat or the urge to say something sharp, but by pausing, you give your wiser self a chance to speak up. In that space, you can ask yourself, is this response going to help, or is it just a habit? What would compassion or understanding look like right now? Let's be honest, there are moments when life feels like it's closing in. Your heart starts racing, your shoulders tense up, and your mind goes into overdrive. We've all been there. Sometimes it happens because of an argument, an unexpected setback, or even just the pressure of a long to-do list. The world teaches us to push through, to grit our teeth and keep going. But Buddhism offers a different, more compassionate approach, one that begins with the simplest act of all: breathing. The Buddha knew the mind and body were deeply connected. He often taught his followers to anchor their awareness in the breath as a way to calm the mind and create space between feeling and reaction. This is not about controlling everything around you. It's about learning to regulate what's within you. The breath is always there, an anchor you can return to in any moment, no matter what's happening. When you consciously slow your breathing, you're telling your body and mind, it's okay, you are safe now. Even just a few mindful breaths can change the course of your entire day. Modern science backs up what the Buddha understood centuries ago. Slow, deep breathing soothes your nervous system. It lowers your heart rate and reduces the flood of stress hormones in your body. In those moments when you feel yourself starting to spiral, try this simple Buddhist practice. Close your eyes, rest your hands on your belly, and take a slow breath in through your nose, feeling your abdomen expand. Hold it gently for a moment, then let it out even slower. Do this 3 or 4 times. Each breath becomes a reminder that you are not your stress, you are not your anger, and you are not your anxiety. You are simply the witness, steady and present, watching it all come and go. It's easy to get swept up in the pressures of daily life, where stress and comparison become the background music of our minds. Sometimes we become so focused on what we don't have, what's missing, what went wrong, what we wish was different, that it blinds us to the gifts quietly present in each moment. Buddha taught that the roots of our suffering lie in craving and dissatisfaction, the feeling that just a little more will finally bring us happiness. But what if the peace we're searching for isn't in having more, but in seeing more, seeing what's already here, right now? The practice of gratitude is one of the simplest, yet most transformative habits you can bring into your life. Instead of waiting for big dramatic events to spark joy, gratitude invites us to notice the small ordinary blessings we often overlook. It could be the warmth of your morning tea, a kind word from a friend, the comfort of your favorite chair, or even the steady rhythm of your breath. These aren't just nice thoughts. They are anchors that bring you back to the richness of the present moment. The Buddha often reminded his followers that happiness isn't found by chasing what's next, but by truly appreciating what's here. Each moment holds something to be grateful for, if we only pause long enough to notice. What's powerful about gratitude is how it shifts the entire direction of your mind. When you make a conscious effort to focus on what you have, rather than what you lack, your energy changes. You move from a place of wanting and frustration to a place of contentment and abundance. Even during difficult times, there is always something, however small, to appreciate: a lesson learned, support from someone you care about, or even the opportunity to try again tomorrow. This shift isn't just spiritual, science backs it up too. Studies show that people who practice gratitude regularly sleep better, feel less anxious, and even have stronger relationships. Your mind becomes less focused on negativity and more tuned in to the gentle goodness that surrounds you. It's easy to think that truly caring about someone or something means holding on tightly, as if letting go would mean losing love or failing in your responsibilities. But what if the opposite was true? What if the deepest form of care actually comes from learning to hold things gently, with open hands rather than a clenched fist? The Buddha often reminded his followers that suffering is born not from love itself, but from the way we attach to people, outcomes, and possessions. He taught that we can love deeply, pursue our dreams, and show up for others, without getting trapped by the fear of loss or the need to control every result. When we get attached, it's as if we put our happiness on a leash, tying it to things we can't control. Maybe you've felt this in a relationship, worrying about what someone thinks, feeling anxious if things aren't going perfectly, or even losing sleep because you can't stop thinking about what might go wrong. Or maybe you've poured your heart into a project or a goal, only to feel crushed if it doesn't work out exactly as you planned. This is what Buddha called the second arrow, not just the pain of an event, but the suffering we add by clinging, resisting, and wishing things were different. But detachment in Buddhism isn't about being cold or distant. It's about bringing space and lightness into your life. It means caring enough to show up, but wise enough to let life unfold as it will. It's about being present with the people and opportunities in front of you, while accepting that everything is changing, and nothing is ever fully in our control. You can think of it like tending a beautiful garden. You water, nurture, and enjoy the flowers, but you don't panic when a storm comes, or try to force the petals open before their time. You do your best, and then you let nature do what it does. There's something deeply liberating about finally understanding why certain things set you off, while others barely register on your emotional radar. It's like you're handed the keys to your own mind, a sense of clarity that allows you to pause before you react, and maybe even smile at yourself with a little more compassion. In Buddhism, the journey always begins with self-knowledge. The Buddha often spoke about the importance of seeing ourselves clearly, not with harsh judgment, but with the gentle curiosity of a wise friend. He understood that most of our suffering isn't caused by the outside world, but by the patterns we play out again and again, without even realizing it. Think about the last time you snapped at someone, or felt a wave of anxiety that seemed to come out of nowhere. So often, we blame the situation or the person in front of us, without realizing there's an old story playing in the background, a memory, an insecurity, an unmet need. Maybe it's the feeling of not being listened to, or the fear of being left out, or a simple craving for approval. The Buddha taught that these inner triggers are like seeds planted deep within us, often by past experiences, childhood moments, or repeated messages from society. When something happens in the present, it touches those seeds, and suddenly we're flooded with emotion. The beauty of Buddhist practice is that it invites us to become mindful detectives in our own lives. Instead of rushing past our reactions, we slow down and ask, what's really going on here? What does this feeling remind me of? Is this pain really about now, or is it something old that's resurfacing? This kind of self-inquiry isn't about blaming ourselves or wallowing in the past. It's about understanding so we can break the cycle. Every time we notice a trigger, we have the chance to respond differently, to take a breath, to offer ourselves kindness, or even to step away from a situation that no longer serves our peace. There's a quiet kind of wisdom in the way Buddhist monks go about their daily lives. If you watch them closely, you'll notice something subtle but incredibly powerful. They move slowly, breathe deeply, and rarely seem rushed or shaken by what's happening around them. This isn't just some mystical habit reserved for those living in temples. It's a series of practical, learnable techniques, small rituals that you and I can bring into our ordinary, everyday lives to create a deep sense of calm, no matter what's swirling around us. One of the first things the Buddha taught was the importance of pausing before you react. If you're faced with an irritating comment or a sudden problem, your old habit might be to jump right in with a sharp word or anxious thought. Instead, take a gentle breath, feel your feet on the floor. Even 1 or 2 deep mindful breaths can put space between you and whatever triggered you. In that tiny pause, you gain the freedom to choose a wiser response. The Buddha called this mindful awareness. It's like stepping out of the rushing river and finding solid ground, even if just for a moment. Another simple but transformative practice is what I call the daily reset. At least once during your day, step away from your phone, your work, or whatever noise is around you, and just sit quietly for a few minutes. Close your eyes, notice your breath. Let your thoughts come and go without getting tangled up in them. This practice doesn't require a meditation cushion or incense. You can do it on the bus, at your desk, or even standing in line at the store. It's a gift to yourself, a way of coming home to your body and reminding your mind that it doesn't have to chase every thought. Buddhist wisdom also encourages us to pay attention to our senses as a way to anchor ourselves in the present. When you wash your hands, feel the water and notice its temperature. When you eat, slow down and really taste your food. These tiny acts of mindfulness keep your mind from running away with worries about the future or regrets from the past. They reconnect you to the moment, the only place where peace is ever possible. There's something quietly powerful about a person who doesn't get swept away by every feeling or opinion that comes their way. Most of us are taught, often without even realizing it, that life happens to us and we just react. Someone says something hurtful and instantly we're angry or sad. We lose our keys and the day unravels into frustration. It's like living on a roller coaster where every high and low is decided by what's happening around us, leaving us with this constant sense that we have no real say over our own happiness. But the Buddha offered a radical alternative, that true strength is not about avoiding difficulties or denying our feelings, but about learning how to meet each emotion with awareness and gentleness instead of letting it control us. Think about how much energy we spend every day wrestling with emotions that arise out of habit, resentment, jealousy, anxiety, even old hurts we thought we left behind. The Buddha understood that these feelings are part of being human, but he also taught that we are not prisoners to them. When we practice mindfulness, when we pause and observe what's happening inside us before acting, we begin to see that every feeling is just a visitor, not a master. This space, this little pause between what happens and how we respond, is where real freedom begins. Suddenly, you're not just a character in the story of your life, you're the author. You get to decide what happens next. This kind of emotional freedom isn't about becoming cold or shutting down. In fact, it's just the opposite. When you stop fighting your emotions or getting lost in them, you make room for a gentler, wiser kind of strength. The Buddha spoke of equanimity, a deep inner balance that lets you feel everything, but stay steady no matter what comes your way. It's like standing in the middle of a storm, but knowing your roots run so deep that nothing can uproot you. The rain might fall, the wind might howl, but you stay grounded. True peace isn't about having a perfect life. It's about finding calm in the middle of every storm. When you discover the power to respond, not react, you unlock a freedom no one can take away. Thank you for sharing this journey with me and for being part of our growing Buddhist Journey community. If today's message spoke to your heart, make sure to check out one of the suggested videos on your screen right now. It might be exactly what you need next. Until then, keep walking your path with wisdom and let your inner peace lead the way.